So I told the people of the city that I wanted them to emerge stronger from this as an example to the terrorists that what they do doesn't work.
From the 9/11 Memorial Museum, this is Our City, Our Story, a series where New Yorkers talk about their city, what it means to be a New Yorker, and how September 11th changed that. I'm Jenny Pachuki. New Yorkers of a certain age remember their 107th mayor, Rudy Giuliani, for his leadership after the September 11th attacks, when he only had a few months left in office. No matter how people felt about him personally before the attacks, the time after revealed a man who united a city amid a national crisis, somebody who demonstrated resilience and helped a country begin to heal. Giuliani's New York story extends far beyond these attacks. Long before he became America's mayor, he was a kid from the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn, born in 1944 to a working-class family, an unlikely Yankee fan growing up in Dodger territory. How did you come to be a Yankees fan?
My father was born in Manhattan, and my mother was born in Brooklyn. And my mother required my father to live in Brooklyn, which he resented. And his revenge, because my mother wasn't paying attention, was to make me a Yankee fan in the middle of Dodgertown. I was literally 1 mile from Ebbets Field. All my relatives, my mother's relatives, mostly were Dodger fans. And all my friends were Dodger fans. And I spent a great deal of time fighting and defending the Yankees for the first 7 years of my life.
Sounds like he put you in sort of a hard position there.
He did. I attribute some of my stubbornness, and either you can look at it as stubbornness or commitment to principle, to my remaining a Yankee fan in the middle of what were really the hottest days for the Dodgers. Those were the late 1940s and 1950s, when the Yankees and the Dodgers were in almost every World Series.
When he was 7, Giuliani moved with his family to Garden City on Long Island. He kept close ties to the city, though. After he graduated from high school in Brooklyn, Giuliani wavered a bit on what exactly he wanted to do. After high school, you're kind of making your decisions about what to do with your life next. What were some of the things you were debating?
Well, when I left high school, I was going to be a priest, and I was entered actually in the minor seminary in Bayshore for the Montfort Fathers, who are missionary priests who work in Haiti and in Africa. And before that, I debated being a doctor quite a bit. I thought about that a lot.
You're from a family. There's some first responders in your extended family, isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. I thought about being a police officer quite a bit because I have 4 of my uncles were police officers. 3 of my mother's brothers and my father's youngest brother were police officers, and several of my cousins were police officers. One of my mother's brothers was a first officer, lieutenant, then captain. So that was something that always entered my thoughts, being a police officer. Sort of romantically, I guess, I thought about being a firefighter. Every kid does.
So you didn't become a priest, you became a prosecutor.
Well, at one time, Father Michael Judge, who was the first person to die on September 11, told me that I actually got a chance to do all the things I wanted to do, because I was at the bedside of about 40 or 50 firefighters with him before September 11, as I was at the bedside of about as many police officers. And I got a chance then to kind of be a doctor, because I'd make sure they got the best medical care. So Father Judge said, see, that shows you're being a doctor. And then number 2, I would spend time trying to console them and help them and assist them as best I could. So I was getting a chance to be a priest. And number 3, I was usually trying to catch the bad guys who did it, which, even though I was mayor, I was still very much involved in law enforcement.
After graduating from Manhattan College in the Bronx and then New York University Law School in Greenwich Village, Giuliani began a career fighting crime as a prosecutor with the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, working to bring down some of the heavy hitters in the world of organized crime.
We would be involved in, investigating and prosecuting the Sicilian Mafia, the Colombian drug cartels, Nowadays, they would be dealing with the Mexican drug cartels, as well as the fact that New York in 1970, 1980, from about 1930 on, was the home of 5 organized crime families, not just one. I mean, Chicago had 1 organized crime family. New Orleans had 1. Rhode Island had 1. New York was cursed by 5 families, and that created considerably more control by organized crime over New York City than organized crime had over any city, even including Chicago. Organized crime, meaning the mafia, controlled the carting business. What that means is all the garbage that gets collected, with the exception of residential garbage, is collected privately. You pay for it, and you have to pay a carter to do it. All those carters were controlled by the mafia. You were not entitled to have a private carting route in the city unless it was approved by the mafia.
Were you ever worried about yourself going after these 5 families? It seems like a precarious position to be in.
Well, they threatened to kill me a few times, once at the beginning for $800,000 and once at the end for $400,000. I was kind of annoyed that my value went down.
I know.
In 4 years. That was really bad. Sort of had a sense of immortality, which is, I guess, young people have, right? Remember, Yogi Berra was asked if during the D-Day invasion, which he was part of, was he afraid? And he answered in very simple Yogi terms, I was too young to be afraid. And that may be true with me, too. I was too young and maybe too arrogant and felt too immortal to be afraid.
Then came 9/11. It was primary day in New York. Instead of September 11th being the day that was a symbolic end to his leadership, it became the day that defined his leadership as he helped New Yorkers navigate the worst attack on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor. The attacks upended the lives of every New Yorker and tested the resolve of both the city and the nation. Giuliani is the man who led us through the tragedy of that horrible day and then helped New York begin to heal in the aftermath.
So I told the people of the city that I wanted them to emerge stronger from this, as an example to the terrorists that what they do doesn't work. And the reason I said that is because one of the defenses against terrorism is resiliency. There are specific defenses against terrorism, both military, intelligence, and philosophical. But there's also resilience, meaning I'm not going to say don't let them bother you. Of course they're going to bother you, and of course it's tragic, like San Bernardino recently, or Paris. But don't let them interfere with your way of life for too long. Take a little period of time to mourn, and then get back to your way of life and let them see that we're so strong that they can't affect us. And New Yorkers did that. They were great at it. We withstood the worst attack in the history of our country, the worst foreign attack in the history of our country, worse than Pearl Harbor. And now, 15 years later, the area of downtown Manhattan that was attacked has twice as many people living there.
What do you think September 11th has ultimately done to the spirit of New York?
It has made New Yorkers much stronger, less insecure. I think New Yorkers now realize the great strength that a ethnically diverse, constantly evolving city can have. But when I said I want us to emerge stronger than we are, it was more of a prayer than it was a statement of fact. And the reason I turned to Churchill and to a few books on Israel were that they were the most recent example of people who had gone through bombing of London in the 1940s, and how Churchill had to get his people through it. So I had confidence that if the British and the Israelis could get through it, the people in New York could get through it. And I remembered something about them that I knew from growing up in New York, which is on small things, the people of New York are pains in the neck. I mean, they'll drive you crazy over too much noise, potholes, and all that other stuff. But over big things, like when something terrible happens, they pull together. And that's exactly what they did. They pulled together and made a much greater city.
From the 9/11 Memorial Museum, this is Our City, Our Story. I'm Jenny Pachuki, series host, writer, and producer, with executive producers Michael Frazier and Carl Crico. This episode was written by Michael Frazier and myself. Additional production support provided by Elizabeth Bistro, with a special thanks to CDM Studios. To listen to more episodes in the Our City, Our Story series, visit our website at 911memorial.org.